before Columbus. Before any Europeans set foot in the Americas. There were athletes here. Not just athletes, entire civilizations built around physical excellence, competitive sport, and training systems that in some cases were more sophisticated than anything happening in Europe at the same time. This is the story of indigenous athletic traditions of the Americas, and it contains some of the most extraordinary physical feats ever documented. Let's start with running. The Tarahumara people of the Copper Canyon region of northwestern Mexico are considered by many researchers to be the greatest endurance runners in human history. They call themselves the Rarámuri, which translates roughly as those who run fast or the running people. And they have been running ultramarathon distances not as sport, but as daily life for centuries. Traditional Rarámuri hunts involved running deer to exhaustion. A hunter would follow a deer at a steady pace for hours, sometimes days, until the deer simply collapsed from exhaustion. This is called persistence hunting, one of the oldest hunting strategies in human history. It requires the ability to run continuously at a moderate pace for distances that modern ultramarathon runners train for years to achieve. Christopher McDougall's book Born to Run brought the Rarámuri to widespread attention in 2009. But researchers had been studying them for decades before that. Their biomechanics, their diet, their sandals made from recycled tire rubber, everything about their running form and lifestyle has been analyzed by modern sport scientists. What they found was striking. The Rarámuri show almost none of the running injuries that plague modern runners: stress fractures, knee problems, IT band syndrome. Their natural running form, which involves a midfoot or forefoot strike with a short stride, matches exactly what modern biomechanics research identifies as the most efficient and least injurious way to run. They discovered this not through scientific study but through thousands of years of running. Their diet during ultramarathon events is equally fascinating. They consume pinole, toasted ground corn mixed with water, and chia seeds. Chia seeds are now sold in every health food store in the world as a superfood. The Rarámuri have been using them as endurance fuel for centuries. But the Americas had more than runners. In Mesoamerica, the region encompassing modern Mexico and Central America, a ball game was played for over 3,000 years. It is called the Mesoamerican Ballgame, and it may be the oldest organized team sport in human history. The ball itself was solid rubber, sometimes weighing up to 9 pounds. Players could not use their hands or feet. They moved the ball using their hips, thighs, and sometimes forearms. On a court that could be over 100 meters long, this required extraordinary hip strength, coordination, agility, and endurance simultaneously. The physical demands of the Mesoamerican ballgame are difficult to fully appreciate. A 9-pound rubber ball traveling at speed, redirected by a hip, the impact forces involved are enormous. Players wore protective padding, but injuries were common. The game was played at the highest levels of Mesoamerican civilization, at the courts of the Aztec and Maya, and the physical preparation required to compete at that level was significant. What training produced the bodies capable of playing this game at an elite level? The historical evidence suggests a combination of running, swimming, and specific movement drills that developed hip power and lateral agility. Aztec warriors trained in many of the same physical disciplines as ballgame players. The two were connected. Physical excellence in Mesoamerican civilization was not separated into sport and warfare. It was unified. Now let's talk about something that has fascinated researchers for decades. The Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, developed a game called Tehuaratan, which we now call Lacrosse. When French missionaries first observed it in the 17th century, they reported games that lasted for days, across fields that stretched for miles, with hundreds of players on each side. These were not casual games. They were called the Creator's Game, and they were played for spiritual purposes: to honor the Creator, to settle disputes between nations, to prepare warriors for battle, and to heal the sick. The physical demands were extraordinary. Days of continuous play across miles of terrain, with no breaks, no substitutions, and no fixed end time. The Haudenosaunee lacrosse player was built for sustained, multidirectional athletic output at a level that would challenge modern professional athletes. Their training was embedded in daily life: hunting, running, swimming, working, combined with the specific game practice that developed the hand-eye coordination, agility, and endurance that lacrosse required. Modern lacrosse is now a major professional sport. The Haudenosaunee national team competes internationally as a sovereign nation, separate from the United States or Canada. They did not bring lacrosse to the world. They invented it. And they still play it. The physical cultures of Indigenous America were not primitive approximations of something that would later be perfected in Europe. They were sophisticated, effective, and in many cases, as the Rarámuri running research confirms, aligned with what modern science has only recently identified as optimal. The Rarámuri run in sandals and achieve what modern runners in $1,000 shoes cannot. The Mesoamerican Ballgame developed hip and core strength through movement patterns that modern functional training coaches would recognize as cutting edge. The Haudenosaunee created a sport that required sustained, multidirectional athleticism across multiple days, a demand that makes modern professional sports look brief by comparison. What produced these extraordinary physical capacities? The same pattern we have seen across every culture in this series. Physical demands integrated into daily life from childhood. Movement as survival rather than exercise. Community and competition as the structure that pushed individuals to their limits. And, critically, the absence of the chair, the car, and the screen. These were not people who exercised. They were people who moved. Constantly. Necessarily. Completely. There is a concept in modern health research called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT. The calories burned through daily movement that is not formal exercise. Standing, walking, fidgeting, carrying, climbing. Research consistently shows that NEAT has a larger impact on long-term metabolic health than structured exercise. Indigenous Americans of the pre-colonial era had NEAT levels that modern humans cannot replicate without fundamentally restructuring their lives. Their baseline physical activity, the movement required just to exist in their world, exceeded what most modern people achieve in dedicated gym sessions. They were not superhuman. They were not genetically special. They lived in a world